Hello, everybody. Can someone just confirm that you guys can hear me, or someone write into the chat that you can hear me? Just keep an eye on this. Am I there? Yes, I'm on. So my apologies, guys. I'm John Price, and I am the acting head of faculty for academic studies, which broadly means A-levels and applied science. Apologies for the delay. The lesson that I learned from this is you don't leave a PC idling. I had to reboot the PC under pressure to get it into this kind of position, but we are live and online, and I'm happy to answer your questions. There we go. Cool. So this is a Q&A session. So the first thing I might do is say that I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might want to put into the chat. But whilst you're thinking about what you might want to talk about, what you might want to do, I thought I might talk about a few key sort of points that we can discuss. So the first question that we often get asked by people is, why should I study A-levels and what should I do? And I would say that the main reason is fundamentally about progression to higher education. That doesn't mean that's the only place that A-levels will take you, but broadly about 80% of our learners progress to higher education within a year of them having studied their A-levels here at the college. So I think the point is they're not the only route for people, but they're the one that open up and lock that path to many of the professions that people want to do. So for example, that could be a whole host of things such as medicine and law and the things that people are familiar with, public policy, psychology is a very popular course that people want to do, humanities-based subjects. But on the whole, the broad idea is what people want to do is progress to study at university. So has anybody got any questions they'd like to flip into the chat, or things that they want to ask, or the kinds of questions that they want to do? Perfectly happy to take questions on anything. Hi Lily, thank you for your question. For history A-level, is it mandatory to study modern history, or is there an alternative model? So for history A-level, in the past, so there's the coursework component of the history A-level. In the past, that we tended to open it up to give students a wider range of choice in terms of what they want to study, to highlight it is a course that is fundamentally, it's the coursework part. However, our experience was, in terms of the outcomes for learners, that our learners did best when they followed the kind of coursework as we kind of worked on it. So we focused on this question of modern Russia. We would never absolutely say no to anyone. We'd be always interested in hearing what people want to study. But the outcomes have proved that the best route for learners to get the best grade they could in A-level history was by following the modern Russia stuff, which we work with in the course. Cool. Any other questions from people? How is the law course examined? The law course is examined entirely by examination at the end of 2 years. It's a linear A-level, so we no longer have the old modular. We no longer have the old modular system of AS to A-levels, so it's all exam-based at the end, over across 2 or 3 papers at the end of the second year. Smart Mike Vid says, if we're considering wanting to be an art teacher when we are older, what kind of art course would be best? I think you've got multiple choices there. Fundamentally, it's going to be about that higher education level qualification in art. So in that particular circumstance, you could pursue the level 3 full-time Btec art if that will give you the best outcome in order towards getting you to be what you want to be, or you could do the A-level art alongside another number of subjects that you could study for everyone. I think to be an art teacher, the route that gets you the best outcome that you want, or the best grades that you get, is the most important thing to do there. The other thing I'd say, just watching out if you want to be a teacher, is a number of teacher training courses and so on also sometimes have other requirements of what you need to do. So for example, it's common now for teacher training courses to require at least a grade C in English and maths at Gcse. So if you're thinking about that, make sure that you focus on achieving that goal as well. Ruby Davis says, can you study an A-level with a Btec, for example, sports and biology? Yes, you can. You can't do a full-time Btec course, which is what we'd call the Btec Nationals Extended, but you can do Btec courses, which like the certificates, which is the equivalent of one A-level. So, for example, you could do A-levels, you could do Btec Sport, as in the certificate, with A-level biology and say maybe A-level business if you're leaning in the direction of that kind of idea, or A-level chemistry, whatever combination that will work best. That's fantastic. So Jasmine K, I'm hoping to study medicine at university and want to take biology and chemistry. Would physics be the best subject? I'm also considering environmental science or maths. I think biology and chemistry, excellent choices, without doubt, for studying medicine. I think your best choice in your third subject is, yes, science is good, maths is good, environmental science would be fantastic. I think the main idea is to pick a course that gives you your maximum chance of success. So if you are strong at physics and enjoy physics, then absolutely look at physics. If, on the other hand, in the environment is something you're passionate about, environmental science could be a good choice, or indeed maths, if you're passionate about maths. But I think it's most important to get the biology, the chemistry, and a third subject that's roughly kind of scientific in that area, and aim for that high grade profile that you need to do medicine at university. So Lydia, Lidcott Engage Model Railway. What examination board do you use for your A-levels? Different A-levels use different boards. Primarily, we draw from the vast majority. So you've got the Pearson Edexcel. We've got AQA that we do as well for many of our subjects. And we've got OCI. Depends very much on the subject. So specifically requesting that information from the teams, having a look at that information be useful. Do you infer, are different types of law studied in different modules in one course, or are there different courses for each area of law? So the law course, like everything, is broken into papers. It generally covers a wide overview of the law, tort law, criminal law, and those elements. There isn't a separate A-level law course. There is only A-level law, but it has a wide range of law covered within it. Jess Neville, would you be able to do A-levels alongside an apprenticeship? I'm not the greatest expert in the world in apprenticeships, and therefore that is something I'd like to come back on to you. But I feel that the idea would be that the apprenticeships are full-time programs in themselves. They come with commitments, for example, with apprenticeships, I believe, to have an employer who's supporting you in the course you're doing, and therefore studying a full-time A-level course alongside an apprenticeship would probably not be possible. Danielle Kaur, what is performing arts like? Performing arts doesn't directly fall under my area, but I can try and give some sort of information. I used to work in that department where I was a music teacher here once, and fantastic and vibrant would be my answer. If you enjoy performing arts, if that's a passion of yours, then it's something definitely worth pursuing, and I'd please refer you to the areas of the performing arts area on the website. Jimmy Ferrer says, is there a combining English, Latin plus lit course, or are there only separate courses? There is language and literature are separate A-levels. There isn't a combined one, so you would take them as two A-levels with what you're doing. Sam, how much of the art, design and craft A-level is actual product design, and would it be useful for architecture at university? Again, Sam, that's something that within that one, we've got our art design team who function and handle those parts of those A-levels. They've got a section of the website, so I please check with them directly about the element of the course that's product design. Kyra Huckstedt, if I were to study psychology, what other subjects would be advisable to take along with it? I think, Kyra, it depends very much what you like and what's driving your passion with psychology. So psychology is an excellent subject with great outcomes here at the college. I think one of the things that sometimes gets missed about it is the nature of the course. It's a combination of learning your studies, learning the theories behind them, and then also learning the research methods. In a way, with studying psychology, you study how people have done psychology and some of the body of work that's been done. So if you enjoy psychology and that kind of study, subjects like sociology could go well with it. But also, if you were thinking of careers in teaching or education, then you might want to consider humanities subjects. A number of learners enjoy combining psychology with biology, and psychology is often a popular third choice for people that want to study medicine. So you get chemistry, biology, psychology. So the advice I'd give, Kyra, is very much about knowing who you are, what you want to do. But I think most subjects will work relatively well. Sarah Wright. How many A-levels are students allowed to take? On the whole, our recommendation to parents and students is that you take 3. There is very little reason to take 4. There are occasionally people that are doing 4, and we are open to discussing that. There are certain circumstances it happens. But the reason is because A-levels are demanding, and also now they are linear. 3 subjects may sound like less compared to the kind of experience of GCSE, but actually the depth of knowledge and what you study in them over 2 years is so much wider. So the advice would be, and also you generally don't need more than 3 A levels to progress to any course at university. But we have people who've been to Oxbridge and they only have 3 A levels. So the advice would be really stick to 3, but if people really want to do 4, to have a look at more. Ruby says, I'm not sure about what subject to take, so should I take a wide range of subjects or ones that are relevant to each other? Again, this is an interesting question. I think that the way to think about what you're studying is to think it in terms of what you do in that session. So, for example, if you were a learner and you wanted to take history, so I'm a history teacher here, so it's something I know well. If you wanted to take history, what do you do in history? And fundamentally, what you do in history is you learn to analyze, communicate, and write well. There are many other elements. You learn about history, but the skill that you'll be assessed on and examined on is your ability to communicate in a long form answer. So often students do history, might be doing something like English literature. So if they're doing English literature, although it's looking at a different set of subject matter, what English literature fundamentally is still examining the same kinds of skills, your ability to look at texts and communicate those ideas. On the other hand, with something like history, something like politics could also go well, because a lot of people have a passion for politics, and history obviously deals with these kinds of issues. So I would focus very much on the skills that you do. Where I would advise against is thinking about saying, I don't know what I want to do, so I want to do 1 science, 1 creative subject, and 1 essay-based subject. Because the other thing that happens on your A-levels when you do that is if you're doing 3 essay-based subjects or 3 skills-based that have skills in that area, then when you get better at writing essays in one of them, you get better at writing essays in all of them. And therefore, you do better. Whereas if you kind of spread yourself too thinly across multiple subject choices with no kind of clear idea of what you're doing, you're not developing the skills that are within them. Smile Mike Vid says, Jess Neville, I don't know if this is fully true, but I heard someone say after you finish A levels, you can go back and do an apprenticeship afterwards. Yes, potentially, possibly. I'd have to refer you to our apprenticeships team to check with that directly. Jimifer, are the media and politics courses purely examination based? Jimifer, there is a creative media course, which is a full-time Btec equivalent, but there is no longer an A-level media course. But the politics course, which I do, I've taught on that course and I teach with my colleagues, the politics course is purely examination based. There are 3 exams at the end of 2 years, 1 on the UK, 1 on comparing the UK to the US, and 1 on political ideologies. Kyra, how is psychology examined? Psychology is also purely exam based. So there are examinations at the end of the 3rd year based, which cover the wide range of topics that they do. Someone might say, would we be able to do multiple kinds of art course at once, or can we only choose 1? So if you are doing A levels, the art course you would do is A-level art and design. And so the art and design team are much better placed to answer the questions on the specifics of what they look at in that. But I know that it's quite wide ranging in terms of what they look at. We've had people with interest in photography, people with interest in design, people with interest in more traditional sort of artistic methods. And I believe there's even been people who've got passions and stuff for textiles and fashion have gone through that course at moments in time. If you were doing A levels, you would not be able to study any other art courses, as A levels are a full-time course in themselves, as we discussed earlier. Lily, what A levels do you think would suit someone who is looking at journalism? This is more of a personal opinion, but I think fundamentally as a journalist, you've kind of got 3 or 4 sets of skills that you need to look at. You need to be able to investigate, you need to be able to communicate well in writing, but I would also argue that in the modern world, to be a journalist, you need to be hopefully able to communicate well in this kind of forum. So we're talking about, I would recommend things such as, it depends what journalism you like, but certainly English is always going to help you in terms of writing. Analytical skills, history, law. If you're particularly passionate about certain types of journalism. Economics can help us understand it. If you are interested in journalism for social purposes, or you want your journalism to be serious and focused, sociology could be another fantastic choice. If you are passionate about the environment and you want your journalist to focus on that, something like environmental science. Likewise, if you wanted to be a journalist who specialized in science, as some do. So skills-wise, things that concentrate on your ability to write, present, and communicate ideas. In terms of content, well, what sort of journalist do you want to be? Jimifer, I have a number of subjects I want to take. How do I decide which ones to choose? That is a fantastic question. I would refer you back to, again, is thinking about, what do you want to achieve? That would be one question you've got to ask yourself. What do you want to achieve beyond A levels? Maybe looking at the kinds of courses or things you want to do, and then focus subjects that will give you the best chance of achieving the highest grades to do that. But a second question would also be, what are you good at? And I mean, what are you good at, not in terms of subjects and choices, but I mean more as in, oh, I'm good at art, or I'm good at politics, or I'm good at chemistry. It's more, where do your skills lie? Like, for example, I can speak my personal anecdotal experience in my life is my skills lay better in communication and writing than they did in chemistry, in terms of maths. So therefore I picked A levels that built that strength, and I built that strength and continued on with it. So think about what your skills are, and then pick A levels that play to the strengths of your skills. And the third thing, of course, about choosing what you want to do is, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Those things matter. Not, I think I should do this, or I think I should do that, but I'm passionate about these ideas. This is the kind of area I want to work in, or the kind of thing I want to do, and put them together. You'll also have an opportunity at interview to discuss these things far further in more detail with people who've advised people before. Sarah Wright says, is health and social care all one course, or does it have separate courses within? So the health and social care component we do within A levels works the same way that the sport one I mentioned earlier does. It is a certificate that counts as the equivalent of one A level in terms of UCAS points that's assessed with PMD. The specific things that they look at in the course, again, I'd please refer you to the health and social care team through the website. They can give you much more detailed information about what happens in it. But with health and social care, we have a number of people that take that, often alongside psychology and sociology. They're popular subjects that go with it, sometimes law. And it's for people that, again, have that direction and want to move in that kind of area. Caden, what A levels are best to take if I wanted to be an architect, or would vocational or apprenticeships be better? In terms of what would be better, I think that is a decision for you guys to have a chat with the apprenticeships and vocational teams. But with A levels, architecture is going to incorporate design elements, so I'd suggest having a look with the art team. But also architecture is heavily connected fundamentally to engineering, so again, possibly physics and maths, maybe physics, maths and art, which I believe someone has done recently with the focus on the drafting in that. Would be a good idea. Ruby, my brother went to Petrox 3 years ago, and they all took 4 A levels and dropped 1 after the first year. Do we do that? Also, do you still do AS at levels like he did? Yes. So Ruby, what changed was that the government about 4 or 5 years ago moved against the idea of what they call modular A levels, which was the idea of you kind of take your A levels in pieces where you do an exam in each subject. And this eventually meant to moving against AS levels. So we made the decision that you no longer have a scenario where fundamentally you do 4, then drop 3, because universities no longer require it. University offers no longer ask for 3 A levels, 1 AS level, this UCAS points. They just ask for 3 A levels. So we no longer do that 4, and we no longer do the thing of dropping, because we don't do the AS exams. There is an advantage to not doing the AS exams, though. The advantage is that there is much more teaching time in the first year and across the whole course. So we teach right up to the summer, and we have our own mock exams in the summer. So therefore, you get to concentrate more on those 3. Jess Neville, can you study one subject as an A level, or do you have to take a number of subjects? Yes, to do an A level study program, you must be studying 3 A levels. That's the point, because otherwise it's not a full-time course. So it is an A level program, which you will bolt together out those A level subjects or the vocational equivalents that we have. There we go. Kyra Hookstadt, I want to be a forensic psychologist when I'm older, so would taking biology be useful? Yes, I think is the answer to that. In terms of Forensic psychology and those kinds of subject psychology, absolutely useful. I was actually doing a little research into this, but would be happy to do more further for you if you want to chat there. And broadly, it depends on whether you move into forensic, whether you pursue the route of going into forensic science at university and criminology, or you pursue the route of going to psychology. But biology would certainly be useful because many of those aspects are going to be connected to that. Jasmine K, how do petrox science results grades compare with Ulfcom Academies? I can't comment on Ulfcom Academies science grades straight off the top of my head, but in terms of our achievement as a whole faculty, in 2019, we achieved 29% A star to A, 56% A star to B, and 79% A to C. In terms of our science outcomes, it's not uncommon for our STEM subjects to often achieve up to 50% A and A star and beyond. So I'd be more than happy to furnish you with more statistics if you want to talk about that at a later point. Danielle Kaur, what is the minimum grade you need at GCSE to do A-level law? Very good question, Danielle. A-level law has our minimum A-level entry requirements, which is 5 GCSEs at grade 4, including English language and maths. Elise Sparks says, what happens if 2 of your subjects want to clash with your timetable? We endeavour to do the absolute best that we can to make sure that these circumstances do not occur, and for the vast majority of learners, they don't. In very rare circumstances, if it's a peculiar combination of subjects or connected to what happens with our staffing, it can be difficult to work. We endeavour to do the best that we can to make sure that that doesn't happen. Sarah Wright, are there grade boundaries for the art course? So for the A-level art and design course, it's the same. It's the minimum entry requirement for A-levels, which is, saying again, 5 grade 4s, English language and maths included in that. And I believe we like to see a portfolio at interview, though, of course, in this year it's a different one. What type of subject, Jess Neville, what type of subjects can you take as T-levels? I'm sorry, Jess, I'm not an expert on T-levels. I'd please refer that question to, I believe, the construction department, so the people are leading on that, but I'm sure that our colleagues in marketing would be able to help you with that question. Jasmine K, what is the average college day like now with COVID restrictions in place? It is different. There is no doubt it is different, and there is no doubt it's been a challenge. In a normal circumstance, which we hope to be in back as soon as we can possibly imagine, your college day or your college week is about 15 hours of your core learning, plus about 3 or 4 other hours of things like tutorial on top. Our first years this year, on the whole, are now into a 4-day week, so those are relatively condensed. So you're looking at somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 timetabled sessions a day. In terms of how it's been with coronavirus, I mean, I've been here most of the time, in fact, all the time. The building is much more empty, which is challenging, but it's important to say that the social distancing is there. In terms of what your experience is like an A-level learner in our current circumstance is that you are all in for 1 week for your lessons, and then for the week after, you are out. But we are doing what I am doing here. So we would be in a scenario where we are live streaming to the room. So for example, I'm in the physics lab right now. So I'm sitting where our physics teacher, Dave, sits, and he'll have his physics learners out there, and he'll have his physics learners also on here, but it will be using Google Meet, a live forum coming back, or Zoom. So it is like teaching both groups at the same time. So it's not necessarily a case of the fact that, you know, you're just out of college for a week. That's kind of what it looks like. In terms of the experience, there are coronavirus restrictions in places and lower restrictions, but the most important thing is that we are focused on keeping our learners safe so that we can continue to make sure they get towards achieving their A-level outcomes. Smile Mike Vids, not an A-level question, but about the college, what are the facilities like? Food areas, toilets and clubs? Well, I can say that I regularly, I'm not organised enough to pack my lunches, so I eat at the college every day. There are, so facilities, food areas. So there is the food hall, which exists in E Block, which is a wide one there. There's Costa Coffee at the front of the building. I don't know why I'm kind of putting my hand up there. It's not like you guys can see what I'm pointing. But there is Costa Coffee at the front of the building and various other food outlets around the place. Toilets, there are plenty of toilets. Never had issues with the toilets and things. In terms of clubs, I'd refer you to our student engagement team because they run the clubs, but I did do something recently where I looked through the number of societies and clubs that are going on for available to learners at college, and there were a good 20 to 25, including the college radio station, and some that were much more specific. There was even one about ukuleles. In terms of if you're sporting and you like sport, there is an opportunity to do there is an opportunity to play sport while studying as an A-level learner, because there's no way that just because you're a good footballer or a good netballer that you would say that because you're doing A-levels you can't do this. And in terms of another thing you can consider also is the Aspire Academies, which is for people that are passionate about certain areas. So we've got STEM, we've got Humanities, Social Science, we've got MedVet, which is for medicine, and we've also got the Environmental Academy, and that could be additional time which is on your program designed to support you in doing well. Jimifer, how do English Lang plus Lit compare with each other? Do the careers they benefit differ, and how do they differ in difficulty? Universal question. I'm sure my Lit and Lang teachers will be best placed to answer this, but to give you an overview from my perspective, my understanding is that literature is in some ways an extension of what you experience from English literature at school. It is the study of texts and the ideas and critical analysis, and it works on that way. So it's text, study, answer, things on it. In terms of English language, this is one where I think it is slightly different from schools. And I believe that Claire at one point was in the chat, so she might be able to answer, Claire Scott, who teaches it here. But at school, English language is much about getting your English to a level. That's the government's purpose behind it, of achieving people who are functional in English. And it leads to that point all the way from school. So it's called English language at A level, but it's actually much more about the English language. So it's less about doing an exercise to test your comprehension, your skill in writing, more about how it functions. So, for example, I've had a few conversations with Claire about this, where she likes to comment on my idiolect, I think was the phrase she used. And also we talk about the way that people pronounce things. They look at things like phonemes and different words and that, and they do coursework where they investigate, have an opportunity to investigate specific areas of how people use language. So perhaps that's the difference. English language is about how language functions and how people use it, and English literature is about how people have used it to write text. In terms of the careers, they benefit and differ, and how do they differ in difficulty? Many of our learners do Lit and Lang, do the same and get the same grades. So I would argue that in terms of difficulty, they are comparable. In terms of careers, it's never going to be a career on the basis of one A level. For the vast majority of people, your A levels are part of that route. So it's not, if you don't take English literature, you couldn't be a writer. Nor is it, if you don't take English language, you couldn't be, say, a philologist. Usually the specialism, I would assume, in career-specific relation to a kind of literary studies will be formed more as a consequence of stuff you do at university level, or even the way that you take a generalized English degree at university and then apply that to a career. The best knowledge and experience I have about that. Excellent. Just saying, Jennifer, as well, Claire Scott's just responded in the comments about English language, so I could answer more of your questions there. Mick and Bob too asked, what's the difference between the academies and the Aspire program? So we have what we call the Aspire Academies, and they are the academies that exist within our area of the college. So there is STEM, which is for those people who have an interest in science, technology, engineering, maths. There is Humanities and Social Science, which is Humanities and Social Science, public policy, the way the world works. There is the Vet Med, which is focused on people who want careers in medicine. So that is doctors, but not just doctors, could also be nurses. And there is the environmental sustainability one. And our colleague who leads that academy is truly a magnificent and passionate expert in that area. And that is for people who are passionate about the environment and want to look at what we do with it and could work well with other subjects. So it could be a question of nomenclature, language. They are the same thing. Kyra says, how can we get in contact with you if we have other questions? I would say, Kyra, if you could contact my colleagues in marketing, who I'm sure are scrolling through this, and direct any queries or questions you have through to them, and I will respond to them at a later point. That's one there. Jess, Neville, can you study one subject as an A-level, or do you have to take various different subjects? I think we've already answered that one. Sorry, I've come down there. The chat's gone a bit long. Elise Sparks, how long is each lesson? Lessons are in blocks of hours. So the usual pattern for an A-level learner is they will have one double lesson a week, and then they will have 3 single lessons. That's the idea. That's a general pattern. In some weeks you have 2 single lessons, and in some weeks you have 3 single lessons with online learning components that occur in the 5th hour. There are some subjects occasionally, for example, I'm teaching in one of my groups this year where I have 2 double lessons and 1 single lesson. But fundamentally, they are spread over usually 4 days, occasionally 3 with 2 and 1 in those blocks. Daniel Cool, how many years is the A-level course for law? It's the same number as all other A-level courses, which is 2 years. What are the grade boundaries? Oh, Jamie, what are the grade boundaries to be able to do computer science? So computer science is the standard A-level entry offer, other than it requires a 6 in GCSE maths. This is because the computer science is fundamentally, the reason the course exists is the idea that we're aware of you get types of learners who are interested in science. So you get learners who want to do medicine, so it's biology, chemistry, and something. Other learners who are just passionate about science, and that's what they want to do. So they take a combination of sciences and pursue the one that interests them most. You get ones who've got interest in particular things like engineering and stuff, and higher level engineering, which often connects more to the kind of the maths and the physics elements of what people do. And the computer science one is kind of designed to work with people who are looking for that higher level entry to computer science university courses. So we put that A level on to do it, but there's no beating around the bush. Mathematical competence is an important part of doing that. So computer science does require that 6 in maths. Smart Mike Vids, if we have classes on 2 of the campuses, the Stickle Path 1 and Branham's up by Roundswell, how would you recommend getting around, especially if we have to travel quickly to the other spot? I think that probably the way I would do it, and I'm sorry if this wouldn't work, is I'd walk up past the road from the crematorium. It's about a 10-minute walk. On the whole, the vast majority of A-levels are all on the main site. We do have some of our creative subjects which are down there. So if learners are in a position whereby we need to nurse the beginning of their session time and make consideration for the walking time they have between those sites, then we'll look to do that. Though generally the subjects down on Branham, such as A-level music this year, are concentrated into longer blocks, wider blocks. So they tend to be slightly, there's a day of A-level music as opposed to being spread over because of the way it works. Sarah, if people who go to Petrox live further away from the campus, then there is a way to get to Petrox like bus passes. I believe there is subsidised transport. Please, if you could contact our advice and guidance team, they are the team that are best placed to advise on that. We know that there is bus passes and things that work for students, but they handle and process those applications. Ruby Davis, do you do any of sport-specific academies outside of lesson time? Yeah, so the way it works, if you want to do a sport, is you identify the sport you want to do an interview and you apply to do the sports academy. For example, this year, most of the sports academy activities that are scheduled happen on Monday afternoons, which is a time where year 1 learners are not in college. Therefore, they come in to do their sports stuff on that Monday afternoon, and the academies work that way. Fixtures, when they take place in normal years, obviously it's a different circumstance right now with coronavirus, but fixtures usually take place on Wednesdays. So there are sometimes needs where we have to accept learners to go and do those fixtures. But that is absolutely right. There is no way that people should not be able to do sport and pursue those physical passions at the same time as studying A-levels. Elise Sparks, are you more likely to be accepted if all subjects you take are in one category, such as social science? In terms of being accepted, if you achieve the entry requirements from the course you've been made an offer, you will be accepted. This is our goal. We are an inclusive provider. We try to serve this community in North Devon. Our goal is not to prevent people from doing A-levels or to be elite. We want to support our community in doing what they want to do. What I would say is, if you look at the way and the choices you make about the A-levels you want to do, then you will do better. I think that's an important part to think about. Planning your own learning and what you want to do, and then engaging with us at interview and talking about those ideas. A learner who knows what they want to achieve, even if it's vague, even if it's not, I want to be a doctor, but it is, I don't quite know what I want to do, but I don't want to work in an office. Or I want to work in public policy. I want to change the world. I want to make it better. If you pick A-levels that lead you in that direction, then you will do better. Ruby, I'm interested in architecture, but I'm not very good at art or computing. So do you think it will be worthwhile to take? Well, as in architecture as a subject, Ruby? What I would say in response to that is, My understanding, the best understanding of architecture is the vast majority of architects are higher education trained. Therefore, my advice would be to look at universities and what they offer in architecture and where those courses go, and then to look at their entry requirements and to see where their entry requirements are on their entry requirements, what they think you should need to do. And I think I'll give you a clearer idea of what you want to do. Jamie, what are some of the coding languages do you work with in computer science? I'm afraid, Jamie, I'm going to have to refer you to Michelle Simmons, my colleague in computer science. If you could have a look at the relevant section on the site about getting in contact with her. She's a fantastic teacher and she'll be able to tell you about the precise things that they look at in that course. So I do remember having a conversation with her trying to explain Boolean logic to me, which I'm not the worst person at maths in the world, but Michelle would be much better to answer that question. So again, if their marketing team or whatever could help you make contact with that. Sarah Wright, do you do extracurricular activities? If so, what are some of them? So as I say, the college does do extracurricular activities. We, as in within the A-level team in applied science, we have the Aspire Academies I mentioned earlier, which are extracurricular. By definition, they are not examined, they are not assessed. They are an opportunity for you guys to do more in the areas that you're passionate about. In terms of there are clubs, and like I said, there is a list that's available from the learner engagement people of what they do. But the one that always struck me that I might like to do if I was still a student is I would definitely like to be involved in the radio station, I think would be the idea. So the radio station and Fresh M and where it works. There is also the sports, which again, I'm passionate about sport. Even though I think that would be a great thing to look at. Gavin K, how long is the average college day? So the college day officially runs between 9 and 4:30, and there is not, for A levels, there is not anything that happens outside of those times. Usually, by definition, if a learner has 16 to 17 hours on their timetable a week, and that's over 4 days. So you're talking about 4 to 5 hours of lessons a day. Now, they might be spread in a scenario where you've got one at 9, you've got one that finishes at 3:30, you've got some lessons in the middle, and we'd say that's perfect study time in terms of what to do. So it's a usual day, 9 to 4:30, which has to work because we need to make sure that learners are supported in being able to get the bosses. Cool. Have I reached the end of any questions or any queries that people may have? Okay, well, whilst we wait for some questions there, I've just got a couple of FAQs that I've had people have asked in the past and ones that people talk about. So one of the FAQs that we often get is, how much work should I do when I'm studying A-levels and what does my program look like? So like I said, we're talking about a scenario where you'll probably be in lessons for about 15 to 16 hours a week. So the general advice would be to try and treat your working week like a working week. So we would say if you were to do about 2 to 3 hours regularly of study for each subject on top of that, which would be, 9 hours a week on top of that, it's 15 hours in college, lunchtime travel time's about 27 hours. There will be times in the college timetable where obviously you have to work harder or you have to do more. So it's inevitable in the run up to exams that there will be greater crunch and greater pressure. But in the short term, if you're just doing about 3 hours a week for each subject per week on a regular basis, that will work well. Ruby, how are we going to do interviews with coronavirus going on? Ruby, while coronavirus is going on, we've been doing our interviews remotely. In the past, we've been doing them via telephone interview, though we are going to explore the idea of potentially doing them in a forum like this over Google Meet and Zoom, and that's something we're exploring to do there. Charlie Haken, where is the best place to search for what A-levels are required to do specific degrees? So, Charlie, I look at this a lot because obviously I speak to people about what they want to do. My advice would be there are many sort of like consumer choice websites about universities, but what I would do is pick a university, go and have a look at the entry requirements. So giving you a kind of rough, they will normally detail their entry requirements under their courses. So giving you a rough idea, psychology at Bath is a very, very popular course and a very one for high achieving learners that want to do it. If you go to Bath University, look at their psychology courses and it will detail their A-level outcomes of what they think that you need to do. A lot of the time, a lot of degrees are rather non-specific about the A-levels they want, but some are very specific. So that's the idea you want to have a look at there. Yes, so Jazz Kate, I've heard that there is specific help in the science department, people who want to go into medicine. Is this correct? For example, help with the med school entry exam. Yep, that's correct. So both are what we call year 1 and year 2 medics. We're in something called the Medics Academy, where they also have their tutor. So our year 2 students are currently with Debbie Bonker, who's one of our chemistry teachers, and our year 1 teachers with Kathy Williams, who's one of our biology teachers. And yeah, absolutely specifically. For example, the deadline for medical applications to go to universities via Oxbridge is tomorrow, I believe. It goes out tomorrow. So yes, you are within a group. It's also likely, by the way, that if you're doing medicine, you're doing biology and chemistry, which means you are also very likely to be studying with a number of other learners in that same scenario. So you would know your teachers who know you well and work through and give you specific support. There's also in the past, as well as part of the vet med, work experience that happens up at the hospital, which we were chatting about. We've talked about there. Precisely how that is going to function this academic year with coronavirus, we're still waiting to hear, because obviously that's much more connected to a wider issue. But the intention and the program and structure is in place for there to be about 8 days worth of work experience you do at the hospital if you want to be a medic. Elise, if you didn't take a subject as a GCSE, can you still take it as an A-level? That depends on the subject, but I think the broad answer would be yes. Because on the whole, if a subject is required to do an A-level, you would have been made to do it at school. So, for example, if you want to do biology, you have to have combined science or biology. If you want to do A-level maths, by definition, you have to do well in maths. But the point is that you would have to do those anyway. I could say for the vast majority of subjects, so for example, I teach history. I don't mind if students have not taken history. What I'm interested in how well you've done as a learner. It's the skills. It's not the knowledge in the subjects like that. It's the skills. So you do not necessarily have to have taken a subject at GCSE unless that is explicitly said in the entry requirements for the subject. Because it's not fair as well. I mean, many of the challenges faced by education over the last few years have led to schools having to narrow what students can do in order to get the best outcomes for them. And there was always the age-old choice between geography and history at year 9 that people had to make. And it's not fair. Why shouldn't you be able to do history and geography if that's what you want to do? Abby, I know you offer the AAT course for accounting, but which courses would you recommend with maths A level for accounting? I think the business economics could be very excellent courses to go along with that, because they deal fundamentally business is your clients, and economics is dealing, although it's economic concepts, it's still fundamentally money and maths, which I think would be a good choice. Sorry, I apologize if I say your name wrong, but I've got Ria Ans. I'm interested in environmental law and want to take law, psychology and biology. Would it benefit me more to take environmental science instead of biology? That's a really interesting question, Jan. I'd actually like to have a chat with you about that if you could get in touch with the marketing team, because the honest point is, would it benefit you more? I don't know, but I would suggest, and this would be my advice, biology is an excellent subject, an actual general facilitating subject. But if you really are interested in environmental law, then the skills that you're fundamentally going to be worked with at university are going to be based far more in law than they are in the environment. I mean, I'm making an assumption here saying you want to be a lawyer specializing in elements to do with the environment. So apologies if that assumption is wrong. But fundamentally, you're training to be a lawyer. So I think if it's the environment that's your passion, then environmental science would be an excellent course alongside psychology and law. That'd be the idea. Is there any mental health support? And if so, what is it like? Yes, we have plenty. So in terms of the experience of support for mental health, we take it very seriously. So on the most serious side of the scale, we have our safeguarding team, who are supporting learners in all sorts of environment engagement with things like CAMS and so on like that. But we also have, as well as having your academic tutors, that you have the tutors within the faculty, the teachers that support you in your progress. There are also our professional support tutors who act as a point of contact for you, and their only role is to look after your pastoral interests. I believe there is counselling connected to these, and there is also a lot of the wellbeing hub. So there is plenty of support. We take it very seriously at the college. With courses, are there opportunities to work within the specific workplace? That fundamentally depends primarily on the course. There isn't a great deal of work-based connection with A-levels and workplaces. But again, like say with the medics, we have the connections to the hospital. And actually today, it's funny you say that, but our A-level business students today were chatted to by one of the members of our projects team who is offering quite extensive work experience-based program with further qualifications going connected to that to connect to A-level business. So in some subjects there are. Cool. It's all gone somewhat quiet. Well, I've got a couple of minutes left and I'd like to sum up and I say, first of all, my apologies for the technical issues of being on here about 5-10 minutes late. I'd say it's been a fantastic metaphor for actually, hopefully, what A-level study here at Petrox and progressing will do for you, which is it helps you overcome challenges. There's no doubt that A-levels are challenging, but by overcoming those challenges, by developing the skills that you do in A-levels, we will prepare you for university. And our learners do really well at university, and we know this and we track them. That's the kind of idea of what we're doing. It helps you be that person that maybe one day when you are 40 years old and you are the person in charge of the country and the world, that when faced with those key and difficult decisions that you have to make in those circumstances, part of that journey will have been the skills you developed on A-levels and how they led you to develop resilience and robustness, particularly at this difficult time. Haddock and Chips, can you study 2 degrees subjects at uni if you know? Yes, universities have things called joint honours, so that's not 2 degrees, it's more that you spread a degree across 2. For example, I have a joint honours degree and mine are in history and music, and I did them together at the same time. So yes, you can do that one there. Smart says, if we are still picking between 2 colleges, of course, please apply. And I hope we will do our utmost to persuade you that Petrox is the right choice for you. Okay, everybody, we're reaching up to 7 o'clock and I want to make sure that I don't get locked out of the building. But I've got a minute more. If anyone else got any further questions or queries, please direct them at me. How many colleges can you apply for? I don't think there's a rule, Ruby. I think you can apply for as many colleges as you like. I mean, this is something strange, actually, which I've been hearing coming through. Colleges is not university. We don't have UCAS. It's not a UCAS system. If you want to apply to a college and you want to speak to me, you want to take the opportunity, that's absolutely all right as a learner to do so. So apply. What I'd say is please apply to us, and I'm sure that we will persuade you or show you that Petrox is the best place for you. Okay, everybody, I'm going to sign off now. If you've got any further questions for me, minimum healthcare, sorry, last question then, Sarah. Thank you for getting them. What are the minimum grade boundaries for health and social care? So for the health and social care component you do with A-levels, they are the minimum entry requirements for A-levels, which is 5 grade 4s, 5 grade 4s, including English language at grade 4 and maths at grade 4. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. It's just the first time I've done it, and I hope to do more of these. It's great that you've chosen to come in and engage with this open evening in this new circumstance, in this new world. And we only look to further streamline this process and make it more efficient and provide more opportunities in future open events this year for you guys to speak, not just to me as head of faculty, but the whole of our team and more people around the college. We are learning fast and we are learning how to do all of this better in order to support our community in their education, COVID or not. Thank you very much, everybody. It's fantastic talking to you, and I'll speak to you all later. Thank you.